Hey there. Today we are going to totally nerd out together and dive into four scientific things here that illustrate exactly why men and women need different planning systems. All right. And I was inspired to talk about this here because I just finished reading a book that shed to light so many things that I intrinsically know about the different approaches of planning for men and women, but actually share the physical science of how our brains are proven to be different that actually supports all of this. The book was fantastic. It's called The Female Brain by Dr. Louann Brizendine. Highly recommend reading it or listening to it if you, especially if you are a parent raising young girls, because it talks about the differences of brains from actually in utero all the way through. But as I was reading this, I was like, yep, yep, yep. All of these tie right into why I am so passionate about doing what I do, which is teaching women a feminine planning system. All right. So we're going to be tackling four nerdy things. We're going to geek out about some brain science here today that are really just going to highlight why, when we try and implement a really masculine way of planning and managing our time, it tends to just not work for us. Now, what a lot of people think out of the gate is they're like, oh, well, it's just women are more moody or we're less, predictable. I cannot stand that. That's not what this is about. All right. Biologically, our brains, women's brains, are actually wired differently, and different parts of our brains are different sizes than men's. All right. And this impacts 100% how we should be thinking about productivity, goal setting, planning, and managing our time. All right. So let's dive into we'll just call them little nerdy nuggets here. First and foremost, hormones. All right. Now, I'm not going to talk about this vaguely. I want to talk about something really, really specific. With women, our brain chemistry, all right, the mix of stuff floating around in our brain is shifting almost daily. And for some women, the shift is bigger than others. But the recipe, if you will, of the hormones, the chemistry in our brains is shifting slowly all month long, meaning the mix of estrogen, progesterone, oxytocin. They are kind of mixing things up almost daily. All right. So think like a little cocktail shaker. It's like we're constantly tweaking what's going in there. Think on that. It's changing daily. This is why, if you have been taught from someone to create what they call the perfect week, and I mean, I've shared this book before. I think it's a fantastic book called Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. It's a wonderful book. But when you get to his chapter on how he plans his weeks, he's teaching you got to create your perfect week. And then you rinse and repeat this week after week. And as soon as I read that, I'm like, nope, I know this does not work for women. And friends, this is one of the many reasons why this concept of the perfect week fails us, because our brain chemicals are shifting every single week, which leads to shifts in our energy, shifts in our cognitive abilities, and shifts of when we're really good at problem solving versus when we're really creative versus when we can produce at 10x versus not produce at all. All right. So realizing that and going, oh, it's not there's something wrong with me. This is how our brains function. All right. That chemical mix of those incredible hormones is changing on the regular. So we have to have a planning system that gets it and that allows us to lean into that. All right. The perfect week is not a good solution for us. Now, the second thing here is around our emotions. I learned so much from this book. It was great. So what's called our limbic system in our brain is what our emotional center is in the brain. Men and women both have this, but in women, it is bigger and it's busier, if you will. It's more active. All right. So think about that. Our emotional center in our brain is larger and it's a lot more active. And we need to have a planning system that honors that emotional energy that is going on in our brain, right? If we try and pretend it's not there, if we try and shut it out, you kind of start building a ticking time bomb, if you will. Now, what can this look like when it comes to planning? I know for myself, when there is a large event that is happening for me over a given week, or even if I'm going to a conference or something like that, I know that I need to preserve space to prepare before I go and then to process when it's done. Men and women can walk into the exact same, learning event or training event or something like that. And one brain is processing the information, another is processing the information and the emotions, which means that the space that we need on the back end may be larger, right? And recognizing that this is going on in our brain allows us to create plans that support that, right? Now, the third thing here is really interesting. Our brains, the female brain, is wired in such a way that we are wired to nurture. And then when we are stressed, when those levels, the chemicals in our brain start hitting those stress levels, our brain is wired to seek connection, right? So it's interesting. We always talk about this fight or flight. Well, with women, there's actually in that stress level, there's a connection trigger response, right? And what this means for us in our planning world is we need to plan for and include time for community, for relationships, for connection, for support, right? Not just the grind, right? You hear people talking about that. Oh, if you're building a business or whatever, you just got to get in there and get the grind, right? Well, I can remember back when it was years ago before I had started a family. I had taken a job that meant I would be working from home. And this was pre-COVID, all right? This was a long time ago when working from home was not the norm. And it meant that, I was leaving almost 20 years of office environment living to now go work from home. The company I was working for was based in another state, and almost all of the employees were remote. We were very small. And we didn't have video conferencing then either. So conference calls was just audio. And I mean, weeks would go by where I never saw a coworker, right? I just saw my husband. I worked from home. That was it. And we didn't have our daughter yet. And I can remember after the first 2 weeks, while I loved working from home, I realized as the end of that second week was rolling along, I was like, I'm lonely. Like a couple conference calls wasn't enough to fill that need for connection, right? So I had to start getting like very intentional about creating space in my calendar to go meet a former colleague out for a physical lunch, right? So if you find that the way you're planning and managing your time is leaving you lonely, it is because, right? That's the way our brain is wired. We are wired to seek that connection. Now, the fourth one is really, really interesting. All right. Women's brains. So we all have heard this idea of the left side and the right side of the brain, right? Women's brains have interactions between the left and the right side more than men's do, which means that constant talking between left and right side shows up in the form of, guess what? Multitasking, right? You may have heard or felt like women are better multitaskers than men. It's not so much better or worse, it's that our brains are talking, that right and left side, more so than men's, which leads us to multitask more than our male counterparts. Now, while this is in some way good, meaning, I like to harness my ability to multitask when it serves me, meaning when it's in a productive way, right? So trying to keep my brain only focused on one thing at a time. It's like I may be listening to an audible book while I'm cleaning or something like that. Having the awareness that our brain is tempting us to multitask more than men, we need to know this, because what we need to do is put planning systems in place that try and minimize too much what I call context switching all day long. There is a difference between multitasking and context switching. All right. Multitasking is doing two tasks at the same time, like cleaning and listening to an audiobook. As long as our brain's only focused on one, that's a really powerful skill to have. Context switching is when we're going, I need to do this. No, not let me go take care of the dogs. Now let me go back to the work email. Now let me help the kid with homework. Oh, wait, what's going on for dinner? Right? When we're I like to think of it as like that ball on a pinball machine all over the place. We need to realize we have a proclivity in our brain to head there. And so we need to have planning systems in our calendar that intentionally minimize context switching, but allow us to lean into the good type of multitasking, right? And even just having that awareness of, all right, my right and left side brain is going to be talking more than my male counterpart, my male friends, my male coworkers. Even just that awareness can be like, okay, I'm going to think about a different way of approaching this situation. All right. So if you've been struggling to implement some planning tips or tricks that were developed by a male brain, right, and you're struggling to do so, it's not because you're not smart enough or your brain is broken. The planning system is, right? The planning system was built by a brain that is not built the same as yours. And so it's not going to serve you as well. All right. So let's recap real quick those four kind of scientific things that are different in our brains than men that really highlight why we need a planning system for women. So our hormones are changing daily, right? That chemical, that cocktail is changing every single day. So if you are trying to build the perfect week, it will continue to fail you. We need to recognize that our emotional centers, right? The limbic system in our brain is bigger and busier. We have to have plans that acknowledge and support that instead of trying to shut it down. Believe me, I tried to shut it down for a long time. Didn't work. The third one, the wiring in our brain is such that we seek connection when we're stressed, that nurturing aspect, right? So we need to plan for community, connection into our regular lives. And then fourth, recognizing that right and left side, they're talking more so than our male counterparts. So if we're not careful, we will lead ourselves into a world of nonstop multitasking and context switching. We have to have the awareness around it, and then we have to have the skills in our plans to know how to support that. So if you have been trying to implement a system built by a male brain and it's not working for you, it's not you. Instead, let's get you equipped with a system built by a female brain and lots of female brains that we know are supporting the chemistry and the biological differences in our brains. All right. So if you are brand new here and you're like, what does this look like? I would encourage you to head over to either Google Play or the App Store and download my app. It's a free app. It's called The Pink Bee, all one word. All right. And in there, right out of the gate, I've already got 2 little mini courses for you that are going to start to help you understand, what does a feminine planning system look like? What fundamentally makes it different? And you're going to learn some time management tips that you'll be able to put into play right away. So if you have found this helpful, if you have anyone else in your world that kind of geeks out on having some scientific meat behind why what we're doing here actually works, please feel free to share this video with them. Encourage them to come subscribe here on YouTube. And I will be back next week with a powerful time management tip or a planning strategy here for you as well. All right, friends, have a fantastic